What's up, boys? Callsign Grimey here, and in today's video I'm going to walk you through and share with you my deck build list for the open beta multiplayer for Broken Arrow. All right, so let's jump straight into it. Not going to waste any of your time. We're going to start with this video for good old America, USA, as the Marine Corps. Semper Fi to all my fellow devil dogs out there that may be watching. So here is the deck that I built that really did well for me in my playthrough throughout the closed beta period, and this is what I'm going to be using for the large part of my open beta multiplayer experience here. So let me walk you through what I did here and kind of explain the reasoning on why I took these units to bring out here. I think this is a pretty good rollout. Of course, this is not the end all be all, and depending on how you play is going to probably dictate what kind of units you're going to want to bring out, the quantities, and how you're going to want to deploy them. All right, to each their own, but think of this as maybe perhaps a kind of baseline level here, something that you can maybe build on, improve on, tweak to fit your needs and your play style. So with that being said, let's jump straight into it. First, we're going to start with our recon section here. Obviously, Force Recon is going to be a very great resource in unit to have. That's going to do a lot of work for you out here as well. So your Force Recon unit here, I'm taking all six of them, which is the max you can take in your deck here. They come at a unit cost of about 75 for each one, and that's not including, and you can add underneath it a transportation means, which I do have under here, which is going to be that LAV 25A1 here, which will transport them in. So in this case here, I only have one, but I can also use a Osprey or heli to bring in these troops as well. So that's why I didn't add too many more of the vehicles here. I kind of wanted to not have too much expense on the ground transportation and maybe utilize air transportation for these troops and get them in and maybe even push them in deeper into the enemy territory or areas where I want them to go. Next, we've got the Cavalry Scouts here. Pretty much just a pretty standard unit here. What I really like about this unit though is Javelin. That Javelin is going to be so important here. Depending on where you deploy them and you position them, they can really help to mitigate those enemy tanks that might be rolling in a certain area here. Got to be really strategic in where you place them because it's just a 3-man unit here, and they can get wiped pretty quick, especially if you run them into enemy ground forces. They'll pretty much get obliterated just because they're outnumbered. So be smart on where you put your Cavalry Scouts right here. But what's great about them is you could use them to essentially pick off some tanks early on. And of course, the scouting aspect of them as well. I think they're very useful. I take 2 units of them, as well as I will pick up the M3A2 here as one option to transport them. It's a little bit more costly here at 85 gold to points to utilize it, but it gives them a little bit more protection, and this thing does have some pretty good weapons on here with the 25 or 137 millimeter ammunitions that it can employ. So I take 1 unit of that, 2 units of Cavalry Scouts, and again, using these in a very situational basis on where I'm going to deploy them, but I find them to be very useful, and so we will add those on the recon side. Next, moving in to the M1A2, we have this tank right here we're bringing out here. Sheer just power. You've got the Browning on top. You've got a 240 up there. Not to mention the cannon on this thing. It's costly though, and I only have 1. This is another kind of a situation for me where I'm very kind of utilizing this in a area where perhaps we've already secured it. So we just want to have an additional kind of just a big tank in the area to help fend off any kind of advances from enemies. It's not necessarily what I'm going to be using to push into a territory with just 1 unit, but again, they are costly. So this is something you have to be very mindful of where you're going to put it in so you get the best bang for your buck when you do pull that one out of the inventory. Next here we have the M7A2. You know, this one is a budget friendly tank that can get in there. It's got some decent weapons on there. It'll do some damage and all that stuff. It's, you know, maybe slightly above average or so for me. Only got 1 of these as well, and I generally will pull these out together along with the M1A2, so they kind of roll out together when I pull them out, and I'll put them in an area where maybe I'm trying to, again, hold off maybe a certain pathing into a section or a base that we're holding for more of a defensive kind of situation is how I employ them. Next, another one here, the M981. We've got this bad boy up here. Again, this right here is slightly less than the M782, and I only take one of these as well. And as you can imagine, this is also kind of going in this package of tanks that are gonna be used in for me a defensive situation where I'll stage them up and all that stuff, because I only have so few of them, and I'll utilize them together in that regard. Next, we've got some scout snipers here. I honestly don't use them a ton, which is why I only take one of them. I've know players that will max them all out and they like them a lot. So I don't use them too much. I'll just take one unit of them. Doesn't hurt to have them, you know, again, because of the scouting aspect of what they bring to the table. I find it useful. And then I'll also pair that and add in the LAV 25 here as a means to transport them, especially if you're trying to push them forward into the front lines or crossing into enemy lines. I'm not going to have them run on foot from the spawn point, so we'll give them a vehicle, and it's not too costly at 55 points or gold to draw them out and then send them on their way to go do some forward recon or scouting. And then finally, just a cheap little vehicle I'll add here just as a way to have something in case I need, you know, transportation for the scout snipers. I'm low on points. It's really useful to have some units in your deck that are low cost, because in the middle of a battle with everything that's going on, it's really easy to burn through your points, your gold, and you realize like, oh my god, I've got like 30 left on me or 40 left on me. I need something. And so it's useful to have a couple of low cost items that you could pull out in the pinch. And for me, this IFAV M2 is exactly that, just a means to have there in case I need it, kind of like a condom. Next, let's go to infantry. This is going to be very important here. Infantry. Now, never mind that right now this shows that I'm over the allotment here. I guess they may have adjusted the allotments and the points for these. I was pretty sure that's what happened from the closed beta to now the open beta. This is my deck build that I had, and it remembered it surprisingly from the closed beta. And at the closed beta period, everything that I have displayed here was good to go. It was within the budget that they had allocated. Apparently now they made some tweaks. I don't know what exactly they tweaked on the costs, but something went up a bit. But let's walk you through it anyway, and I'll explain. By and large, you're going to need troops, boots on the ground. I'm going in as many as 7. I would go more if I could with Marines, probably like 10 units of Marines, because you're just going to need them to push into buildings, hold different areas, fend off advances from the enemy, use them to push in to take over places. You're going to go through your troops fairly well, you know, so I like to have a lot of them, as many as I can, and try to find that sweet spot. So for me, in the closed beta, 7 worked out for me very well, especially when you are communicating with your teammates on your side, so that you guys can pull out your ground troops and spread it out, so that not any one person is burning through their allotment. That helps out tremendously, and we'll talk about the communication aspect of this game in an entirely separate video. But 7 Marine units here is what we're going to take, and then I'm also going to add the AAV here to transport them, and I have 4 units of those to help transport them in, especially when they're deep in the back line and you're making advancements. I want to hurry up and get them up to the front, so I am gonna go up a little bit more here. I'd probably go upwards of 6 at most for these guys in order to transport them. 4 worked out well for me, generally speaking, because I also have air to bring in our troops. We'll talk about that as we move along into the list here. So that is my allotment. Ground troops cost you 90, which is, you know, not exactly cheap. I would say it's probably in the middle of the ground compared to all the other unit costs that we're going to talk about here. Next, love the dragon team here. These guys, I max these out, and I'd take more if I could. With the amount of tanks that are rolling in throughout the map when you're battling in multiplayer, it pays to have, you know, a dragon team, a toad team, something that can take out the enemy tankers. And the dragon team for me is an essential part of my strategy. And again, however you play the game is going to dictate what units you're going to lean on more than others. For me, it's a dragon team. I'm also going to add in the AAV here as a means to bring them in from the back line, and I only have one unit right there for them. These guys at about 100 for the cost to pull them out, pretty much right on par with the Marines here, the platoon of Marines. But these guys are super valuable. These guys are holding defensive positions. These guys are pushing up with the boots on the ground. You know, there's different ways you can employ them and situate them, especially in areas where you expect the enemy to travel down. Choke points, you're going to stage them up, and they can wreak havoc on enemy tanks and shred them up pretty quickly. So really like the dragon team, and recommend maxing that out for sure. Next, you got your Marine Raiders team right here. These guys are going to put in a lot of work for you. Got a nice mixed arsenal of weapon systems in the platoon here, from the Mark 18, the Loss right here, shotties. You've got the M32 as well. They give you a nice variety of stuff, good amount of troops in here. And they're pretty deadly, man. They're pretty good to deploy as well. And I will max these guys out. They're slightly less cost than the Marine platoon, which is at 90. The Marine Raiders are 80, which is kind of surprising considering there's more weaponry that they have here. And kind of that's my thought on that. But you know, not too far off with their loadouts here. I mean, the Marines, you get the M27, M320, you got the AT4, which is going to be very useful for taking out some tanks. And then when you look at the Marine Raiders, they've got the Law, MGL, Shoddy. You know, don't know how useful that thing is unless you're putting in the team into a building where the enemy ground troops are at. Perhaps that then helps. And then the Mark 18. But Marine Raiders, again, part of my strategy, I'm going to max out as much as I can on the boots on the ground. They're very valuable for holding places, pushing into new places to take over zones and hold buildings, so on and so forth. And I'll also just add one AAV to that, potentially to transport them as well. Next, we're going to have the Mech Rifleman. It's a small detachment here. They are very low cost, so these are a good alternative. It's good to have a couple of these for when you're in a pinch, when you're down bad, when you're low on resources here. They only cost 55. I added 3 to my deck and kind of use them in those situations where I'm running low and I need something out on the field. They're not bad. They got a good assortment of weapons here. M4A1s, M203s on there. You got a 249 Echo here, and then the AT4. It's a nice little selection of weapons. The only thing about them is that there are only 6 troops on the ground compared to the full platoon and with the Marine Raiders here. So you get less troops here. Pretty good on the weaponry and at a lower cost. So again, this is in my opinion good to have in your deck for those times where you're running low on your resources. Next here, we're going to have the Mech Engineers. These are also low cost. I think you should just max these guys out as, you know, if you can, simply because of the small right here. The small could put in some work and be very helpful as well when you're encountering enemy ground units. It can really help there as well. And for 50 gold, it's really low, and I just think it's worth having there. On this side of things, I also equipped the M2A2 Bradley here that can pull them out and transport them from the back line or wherever I want them to be. You know, I did this because when you total both of them together, you're getting the tank plus these mech engineers with that small for a price cost of 110 gold. If you think about pulling out the Marine troops, you're already at 90 alone. So you know, pulling out the mech engineers with the Bradley, you get a bit more firepower between the Bradley and for what the mech engineers carry. So it's not a bad value proposition. I think that this might be a slept on combo right here when you're gonna pull some of these guys out and add them to your deck. That's my infantry loadout on my deck list. Now let's talk about the vehicles here. Oops, let's go back. On the vehicle side of things, You got, you can't go wrong with the Lav AT. I'll take one of them just to kind of have it here. And obviously you've got the tow system up top here, which is going to do some damage to some ground troops. And it's pretty good here. You've got the 240 up top. So I like to position this guy somewhere nearby other of my forces. I don't want to let him stand out by himself. He'll get ate up pretty quick by enemy tankers. But I'll have him situated somewhere where it will at least have a line of sight on, say, tanks coming down a road, or perhaps an area where I suspect tanks would push in from. It'll be there with some other supporting ground units, but at least we can utilize the tow system on it. Next, we'll go over to the M1A2. We're going to max this out as much as possible. In this case, it's only 2 units that you can take. They are pricey at 290 gold. This is going to be one of your more expensive units, if not the most expensive unit, at least ground forces wise, that you will have in the deck here. But I mean, it brings a lot of value. It's very powerful with the weapon systems on here, with everything that's equipped on here. 240, M2 Browning, M256. I mean, it's gonna rain hellfire down on the enemy tanks. Just got to be careful because it's a high cost. You want to be very mindful of where you're sending it at. I think it's best utilized when you have some supporting units with it. Just don't send your 2 tanks alone off into the unknown. Do your best to move up perhaps some scouts to scout around ahead of them to identify targets, and then roll in your tank team. All right, be smart about how you deploy and employ your tanks, especially because of that high cost value. It'll eat up quick. Okay, next we have the M91A3. I have just one of these guys right here. Again, I like it because of the tow system over here. Where it's a lot of tank battles going on in this game. You're gonna need a lot of rockets and missiles to take out your enemy armor that's on the ground. And this guy's kind of cool because you can utilize that tow system again. You could pair it up with the LAV AT, and it can do some damage off to the side. As far as armor goes, I mean, it's not going to hold up too much. It's going to get shredded up. If there's 1 or 2 or 3 enemy tanks coming its way, it'll get ate up pretty good. But what's good about this thing is you get the tow package on here at a lower cost. It's the lowest cost of all of the vehicle, the ground tanks that you have access to, at 65 gold here. So definitely something to have. I only took 1, probably could do more, but as you'll see here, I've got a really spread out and diverse set of tanks for my vehicles here. And in fact, I actually have more units to spend here. I guess they might have adjusted the vehicle pricing on here, because I'm sitting at currently 1,500 out of the total 3,000 allotment. So I think they may have adjusted this, because I certainly didn't have I would have had more of these tanks in here. So let me show you what I do now with this new allotment. I'd probably max out the LAV ATs. We'd also max out the M90s. And then let me walk you through the rest of what I have here. We got the M60 here. This one is kind of middle of the road at that 115 cost to pull the unit out here. It's armored up. You've got the Browning, the M240, the M68 E1 105 millimeter basically cannon on it. So this thing, for its cost, I would definitely go ahead and max out all 4 of those guys to do some damage. It's basically pretty efficient unit to utilize at its 115 price range here. Slightly above that is going to be the M1A2 Abrams. I mean, what can we say about the Abrams here, right? Pretty much goated tank in U.S. military history here. Love to bring it out and use it in the battlefield. It's definitely going to put some rounds down range, do some damage here. Now, with this guy, we're talking about 210 price point. So again, we have to really balance it out. Right now, I'm sitting at 2260 for my total cost. I got a 3,000 allocation here. So we're going to bump it up to get 3 of these guys. All right. Between the M1A2 Abrams and the M1A2 SEP V3, if you roll those out together, that's a lot of firepower. Like that, you're going to put the hurt down on some enemy forces. If you're ringing out, 3 of these guys, 2 of these guys, and you're running them together as an armored unit, it's gonna be pretty impressive what it could what it does, and how much damage it will create on the battlefield. You could go more than this, but the problem is, and it will happen, these games will run you 20, 30, 40 minutes. I've seen it. At certain points throughout that gameplay, you are going to run low on resources. And if you're stuck heavy with a lot more of these more expensive, pricier tanks, and you're down bad with money, you're going to be really in a tough position. You're going to have to lean on your teammates to be able to pull out their tanks to carry out and conduct whatever it is you're trying to conduct, you know, an attack at a certain base on the map or whatever it is. You don't really want to be in that situation. You want to be able to have something to pull out at any given time, whether you have a lot of resources or you are down and don't have a lot. So spread it out so you have a nice balance of units you can pull out at any kind of price point that you have as far as gold goes. Next, the M1A1 HC here we have here. This one 205 cost, so you know, again, above average, I would say, cost on the higher end rather. Same kind of a concept here. I only have one allotted in here. If I'm gonna go between this one and the next one gives you a little bit more, I believe it gives you a little more baseline armor. It gives you a bit more on your optics, your vision. Let's see what else the difference is here. There's definitely a weight difference here, and looks at our armor. A little bit more armor on this one, so you get a little bit more armor here. Now, the thing about this one though is that you definitely get different kind of weapon systems here. Well, at least munitions rather. On the M1A1, you're getting the M830 heat, and then on the M1A1 FEP, you're getting the Mark 324 high explosives. So my thing with these two here is that for 265 versus the 205, when you analyze the armor difference and the munitions difference, is it worth the additional 60 gold that you're going to need to pull out the M1A1 FEP versus the M1A1 HC? That may be something that you need to decide for yourself. For me, I just leave them at one each, and at this point I can probably just add up another Abrams here, and we can get 4, which I like, and keep these guys here as one and leave it at that. I would rather have the Abrams just because of its, you know, it's the Abrams. That is the vehicle side of things. Now let's take a look at support vehicles. Okay, starting off with the LAV M. This is the machine gun LAV. Nope, the mortar LAV, excuse me. I like the mortar LAV a lot. It really helps in a variety of situations. I think it's something that doesn't get utilized enough and is very useful here. One thing I'm noticing already is that they did make changes to the amounts of the mortar LAVs you could take out. You can see that it says 4 for me. Now the new allotment is 3. You can only take out 3 of those. So we've got to back that one down here. They made changes from the closed beta clearly to this now open beta period. This thing could be really OP for the fact of what it does with the mortar rounds. You can use it to drop smoke, get you out of a tight situation. Very versatile. This thing will get shredded up pretty quick, so you know, placement is really key when you utilize your mortar LAV, and but it's super useful, and I can see why they pulled back and are now only allowing us to take out 3 versus the 4, which I previously had in the closed beta. Next, the Paladin. We are definitely going to max out that Paladin. This thing is a beast, super useful, and man, does it rain destruction at a fairly reasonable price at 150 compared to some of your tanks. It's not a bad price. This is going to be one, in my opinion, definitely lean into and max out and utilize them strategically when you want to send rounds down range at a enemy point. Let's say, for instance, perfect example is you utilize scout snipers or force recon or your marine raiders. They're out doing advanced push. They come into the line of sight of an enemy position, and you roll in the Paladins from back behind, and you know, going to give them the order to launch over on that enemy location and just rain destruction. So Paladins are super awesome. They were widely used in my playthrough in the closed beta, and I suspect that they're going to be widely used in the open beta period here with amongst all the players in the game. Next, we're going to talk about the linebacker. Very good unit to have on the field at, again, not a terrible price at 120 gold. I've got 3 for me. Probably could go 4 if I had some extra wiggle room, but I don't. But really useful units to have right here with the stingers and all the kind of weapon systems it has on here and the munitions. Very useful. Utilize these guys. I would say add 3 or add 4 and you're good to go. Next, we're going to have our supply trucks here. Pretty standard. You're going to need these guys. Just max them out to the total amount of 2. You're going to need to resupply yourself, so it's good to have those, no question. And they're low cost at 40 gold. Finally, we've got the Lav AD here. On this guy, same situation. I've gone ahead and run this up to about 3 out of the 4. You know, in a perfect world, I'd love to have 4 of these guys as well. Very useful. Troop transport. You've got pretty good weapon systems on there with the stingers. But I like this one, and I would recommend going with at least 3, if not go with the full 4 for that slot. Now, let's talk about helis. When it comes to helicopters, I'm definitely going to be leaning into the Osprey, especially for transporting troops. That's why I didn't really go too heavy with some of the other vehicles like I did in Force Recon. Only took 1 of whatever we had here, which was this was the LAV 25. Only took 1 of those. Only took 1 of the M3A2 for the Cavalry Scouts. And that's because when you push along far enough into the map as you're battling it out, I don't want to have to drive that far. I would need to get my troops in deeper in a much quicker time period. I'm going to rely on my helis to do that. So I have 1 Osprey. I also have 2 of the Super Stallions, and then these are going to be my 2 primary aircraft for a total of 3 that are going to bring troops in and out. You know, as far as what they do here, they have a little bit of a different weapon systems and all of that, but they generally kind of do the same thing, to be quite honest with you. They're going to transport troops. Osprey can take 26, whereas the Super Stallion can take 30. So there's a slight difference there. Plus, if we're talking about slinging stuff around, the Osprey can take a total weight of 6,500 pounds, while the Super Stallion has a higher carrying capacity at 14,500. So depending on how you're going to employ them, if you're going to be slinging stuff around, how many troops you're going to put in there, you're going to decide on which one you want one over the other. Here's the thing about it. When you factor in the cost of the Osprey being 120 gold versus the Super Stallion being 125 gold, it makes the Super Stallion the obvious choice to lean into if you were going to go all in on one over the other. This is why I have 2 of the Super Stallions and only 1 of the Osprey. Finally, on the heli side of things, we've got the Super Cobra. I'm running with 2 of these guys. I don't pull them up often. I'm always looking for specific scenarios where I'm going to bring out the Super Cobras to employ them. And one of those situations is when there is little to no enemy fighter jets in the air. If I see no enemy fighter jets in the air and I have a location on, say for example, some tanks on the ground, there's a cluster of them, maybe it's like a choke point where the enemy is set up and they're just holding a position. If I can identify that, I will send in the Super Cobras to go in and attack them. It's going to cost you 155 gold to get them out there. Again, this is kind of like slightly and above than average cost to utilize the Super Cobras, but they are extremely deadly and always fun to watch as they destroy enemy ground units for sure. So that's my split on the heli side of things, with the Super Cobra, the Super Stallion, and the Osprey going a 1-2 kind of a spread for those. And that's what I find to be very good all around for troop transport and some firepower. Finally, let's talk about our air units, guys. You got to have the F-18 in your arsenal. I mean, are you even really American if you don't have an F-18 Hornet in your stash? You got to have one of these guys, but they come at a cost at 355 gold. They're very expensive. how you're going to pull this guy out of the stash and utilize him. Typically, it's going to be right out of the gate when you first load in. Everyone's sending their jets and their cargo ships, helis to, you know, drop troops forward, get an initial kind of fight going on there. You can really burn through your gold if you're trying to pull your Hornet out. They are expensive. I also still find that the jet aspect of Broken Arrow so far is still a bit quirky for me. It's still a bit challenging to figure out the airplane logic. You know, I tell them to do something and how it works. We'll see if any changes and tweaks have been made to that system in this multiplayer open beta for Broken Arrow. But again, I only have one unit of the Hornet. That's all we're going to take. They're super expensive, and there are specified times throughout a match when you'll see these guys get popped out. It's going to be right at the very beginning, and then you're going to have it at periods throughout the middle of the fight where they'll pop back in. Especially a tactic I've seen people do is they'll send it out and then immediately send out a heli or cargo ship to drop paratroopers off, and so the jet acts as a defensive mechanism to spurn off any other enemies from coming in trying to take out the cargo ships or the cargo planes that are trying to drop troops off, or whatever the case may be. So that's typically how they're employed. The night attack here, the AVAP Harrier, is sitting at about 200. Way better pricing on this to use than the Hornet. However, they are two different aircraft, and of course what they can do is gonna be a little bit different. Still, the Harrier is good if you're gonna do some bombing runs, if you're gonna hit some ground targets. It's a really good aircraft for the cost. This is one that I'm typically going to pull out first if I need to. You'll see here that I only have one unit of each of these. Now the F-35, to be quite honest with you, this one you could get rid of and go ahead and replace it and add to one of the other aircraft here, like the Hornet or the Harrier. You could add another one to that. But I generally took this one out here just to check it out. I was testing it out during my closed beta experience here to test it all out. It performed fairly well, and I just kind of left it as is. This could be something, again, that you can get rid of and just add another slot to one of these other two. You can keep it, but at a cost of 280 here, you start to really kind of have to evaluate the cost analysis of each of these three aircraft and figure out which one is going to be best for you and your play style, and then also figure out with the rest of your deck how you've loaded it up, how you're setting yourself up to be, how will these aircraft support what you're trying to do, which one will be better suited for the kind of tactics you're going to employ. So it takes a little bit of a thought process with all of this to decide on which ones are which units are right for you. And that's exactly why I said in the very beginning of this video that my deck isn't the end all be all. I would love to see what you guys come up with that you find to be very useful. I think that this is a great starting point. It gives you a little bit of everything, not only in terms of the diversity in your units, right, from ground troops to supplies to the vehicles to the infantry to the helis in the air, but it also gives you varying levels of resource value, right, gold cost, so that at any given point you're able to pull out your more expensive stuff. But when you're getting beat up pretty good and you're running low on resources, you're still able to pull out a couple of things to have some hope of defending yourself. And I think that's the best way to approach it. And then as a meta is developed, because that's inevitable with any kind of a video game, then you can make those adjustments and figure out what, how you want to adapt your deck to better suit what's happening in the game and how people are playing it. So that's it. I want to share with you my setup right here. Again, let me know what you guys are thinking, how you are setting up your builds. Try this one out, play a game or two, see if you like it, and then tweak it to fit your style of play with this game and have a lot of fun in the process. All right, if you got any questions, feel free to leave it down below. Thank you guys for watching. I got more videos coming out around Broken Arrow. I absolutely love this game. It's a lot of fun. So if you want to stay posted for those, feel free to like, subscribe. Callsign Grimey out.